So our local city council was made aware of the installation of these spot cameras just a couple of weeks ago. So our city is building a real-time crime center. So these cameras will be part of that project, from what I understand in this one meeting. And the council member had said, I'm sure it's going to be a great thing. He did not know that the city had already put these forward. And how do cities and towns and HOAs, how does it start? How do they start putting these in the communities? Are the people aware of this? Do the council members and lawmakers even know what these are about?
Yeah, so one business practice that Flock specifically as a company engages in is attempting to avoid community oversight um, by having HOAs and other like private actors install Flock cameras. So your HOA or a mall, those are not democratically accountable institutions, and very often Flock will start with those bodies to put the cameras in a community, and then give the police access, sort of like it's a free taste. And the other is that very often Block is not encouraging police departments to get prior approval. Um, so it's not necessarily the onus of surveillance technology vendors to do so, but if you were a vendor that is interested in a positive relationship with the community, you would want people to trust your product before it was in place, right? And so that means you would push for meaningful oversight and community approval. And Block does not seem to do that.
Can you please tell us, what do these flock cameras, what can they do?
Yep. So Flock has two basic features. One is that the police department can hot list cars. So for a set of identified license plates, they can put them into the system and then get real-time alerts when one of those cars drives by a flock camera. There are not necessarily controls on who gets put into that database, right? It could be reserved for like serious violent criminals. It could be everyone who has an unpaid court fee. And it could be like activists, ordinary people, someone who just pisses off a police officer. Without oversight, there's no limits functionally on who gets put on that list. The second thing that Flock does is it records every person who is driving by the camera and then keeps those records in a database for some period of time. It might be 30 days, it might be a year, that's contractually determined. And then the police can go back in time and access that data and see who is driving in and out of the city, who is at a particular intersection. And by default, that information is not just accessible to your local police department, but every police department who has a contract with Flock. So you might have a lot of trust in your local police. You might not have as much trust in police in a completely different state. Um, and so a potential harm is that there are foreign jurisdictions who are surveilling your citizens.
You bring up something really, really important that I want to talk about a little bit. So in this specific budget meeting, um, I think the council members were under the impression that these cameras are only keeping information for 72 hours. And the police said, well, they hadn't really worked it out yet. They really haven't worked out the legalities of the recordings. And they said maybe 3 to 5 days. But these cameras store information forever. Is that correct?
So that's like a contractual issue with Flock, right? The picture itself is probably less important than the piece of data generated off of it. So even if they delete the picture in like 24 or 48 hours, if they have your license plate tagged to a location, that sits in a database. The specific policies are going to determine when that's deleted. I know in Virginia, we've had contracts that set it at 30 days. But Flock certainly has an interest in making that period as long as possible because they can profit off the data. Um,
How do they
and
profit
it
off the
becomes part of it becomes part of their marketing pitch is that when you make a contract with Flock, you're not just getting, this license plate data for your municipality, but access to a broader database.
Could this technology eventually be used to start tracking people, where they're going? If we were to have another pandemic, could you say, hey, Jen, we saw you go to XYZ location and now we need you to be in quarantine. I mean, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist at all, but is this how this could potentially be used in the future?
So flock data is certainly used for location tracking, right? That's what it does. It's creating a record of your movements around a city. It's less precise than the location tracking on your phone, but that doesn't mean that it can't be used to follow you around, identify like your driving patterns, potentially patterns of your life, right? If you have a flock camera outside your church, it's pretty easy to determine when you go to church. Um, if you have a camera that logs more or less when you're coming home, if you have a data breach, all of a sudden a criminal who's like looking to rob your house has a pretty good indication of what your history is, your movement patterns, when you might be out of the house. So I think that sort of regardless of what your safety concerns are, location tracking is something that is very easy to abuse and was like very often harmful.
Councilmember Stipp, if I could just address your question real quickly about the flock cameras. We do have a plan in place for those. They do go to a cloud-based system where all the information is stored. We don't have to worry about storing it. But one of the benefits that we got immediately from this, as soon as we took on those first 16 cameras, is that we have access to all of their system information. So all of the stuff coming from the different cities and whatnot is readily available to us now.
I think you said any officer with a cell phone or their computer in there can monitor those cameras. I just want to be clear, I understand.
Yeah, I could pull up Flock on my phone back there and show you any hits that we've had in the city. Here's what we can tell you is available right now. It is available to everybody who has a web-based system. So a cell phone, a computer system, their MDCs, all that stuff is available to them right now.
My understanding is once we get the computer and the software to hold it, that we pay for this in the budget, it'll hold it indefinitely, right?
So again, there's different parts of it. Flock is one section that we're talking about. Flock is a cloud-based system. Everything goes up into their servers. There's no time set on that right now. When we
So
talk,
that can be indefinitely.
it could be. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there are two problems here. One is unauthorized access in the department, and then the other is the data being hacked, stolen, leaked. And so you need to trust first that your police department, in order to be comfortable with your police department having this data, you would need to trust that there's no one in the department who's going to have access to this information and not abuse it. Which that's a question of internal department policy. City council probably would want to review exactly how the department plans to give people access, who gets credentials, are those credentials audited, right? So is someone going back and checking every time someone runs a search? That's an area where public oversight is really important. And so if police roll this technology out without public oversight, one of the things that means is there's no guarantees that you will have internal safety measures. The other part of this is if the data gets hacked, stolen, if a police officer is bribed to download a bunch of the data and sell it, then this is valuable information that can become available, on the dark web, can be sold to a data broker, who can resell it, and it's very hard to reel it back in once it's lost. So you need to basically trust that your police department has very good cybersecurity practices, which they may not, and that they are closely watching their officers to prevent abuse.
The way I see it, these license plate readers and these cameras are just part of the essential infrastructure that you need to start building it, and we need to start. So let's just do that.
You tie words like tracking and surveillance, mass surveillance, are those terms that are seen as negatives.
Yeah, I mean, I think Americans are inherently opposed to mass surveillance, right? We are a country of people who value their privacy in various ways. We're a country of people who put hedges around their yards, right? So that you have some privacy in your home. And mass surveillance, including surveillance that's done primarily by commercial entities, is something that people have a lot of concerns about. You should be able to use your phone without worrying about where that data is going to go. which is why it's important that we have a general privacy law, which we don't have in the United States right now, something that controls how that data gets used.
What is the main takeaway people should take about this new technology, the surveillance cameras? What is the main takeaway?
I think people should recognize that they have a right to decide how much surveillance they want in their community, and that they should expect their elected leaders to respect the community's decision, right? People should get a say, and then their elected leaders should respect that.
It's important to me that I'm fair in my reporting. So I want to ask you, what are the benefits of AI? What are the good things? I need some positive things. Are there any positive things about AI?
Yeah, AI is a tool. You can use it well and you can use it poorly. So AI for like advanced medical research, it can be very powerful and helpful, right? I think the basic question is, are you using AI to sort of build out the base of human knowledge, things like research, or are you using it as an excuse for human decision making? In which case, it's putting a fig leaf over a problem that has already existed, or it's making that problem worse.
Very interesting. Well, I really enjoyed talking with you today.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Jen.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.